Well, good afternoon. I hope you are more awake than I am. Listening, as Ed said, now in Damascus is 12 and 40 minutes. So after midnight. So we'll hope to make this session interesting. I see the questions that Ed has sent me, and I will go through maybe in this half an hour. Try to let you to have an idea about what is it like in emergencies like the emergency we have in Syria. Well, just a small background, maybe, just to give you the context. I don't know if you know the Syria conflict. Now it's in its seventh year, so it's one of the biggest humanitarian crises that this area of the world has gone through. We are talking about more than 6 million people internally displaced. We are talking about the same number externally displaced out of Syria. God knows how many people lost their lives, and God knows how many people are detained within this with this party or within that party. In this crisis, the Red Cross, or in this area of the world, it's the Red Crescent, the Syrian Arab Red Crescent, was the lead agency, and still until now, in response to this crisis, which began in 2011, in fact. So slowly it began as protests. Maybe some of you followed that, maybe some of you didn't. Small protests that were on Fridays only, then it escalated to violence, then into the use of arms, then into a full-scale conflict with the use of heavy arms from all of sides, including airstrikes, mortars, shelling, you name it. The issue of this conflict is the main issue is the challenge of being, for the Red Cross, for any party that want to, in fact, withhold the humanitarian principles, is to stay in the middle, is to be neutral and to be impartial in this conflict, because that is an enabler for the Red Crescent to be able to serve everybody. In fact, in this polarized crisis, this proved to be very, very difficult. In fact, because the main slogan that was from the beginning of the crisis, I think they got it from George Bush: "If you are not with me, you are against me." So each party of the conflict used that, and since the Red Crescent cannot be with anybody, it is in the middle, as in sticking to the principles of impartiality and neutrality. A lot of parties to that conflict considered that in some point of time that the Red Crescent is with the other party, they are not impartial. That proved a challenge trying to run the operations, trying to preserve the safety and security of the team itself. In the Red Crescent and in the Red Cross worldwide, the standard communication tools used on the ground, in fact, is the VHF radios. It's used for emergencies, used for to coordinate the ambulance movement. It's used to coordinate the disaster response team's movement in response to the events ongoing. At the beginning of the crisis, because of the nature of this crisis, because of this VHF, as you know, or as you don't know, I don't know. It's a clear way of communication. So if you have the frequency, you just tune in and you can hear whatever it was said. That in the beginning of the crisis was a challenge because as Red Crescent operators and volunteers, there was this issue of being afraid sometimes that maybe parties to the conflict, especially authorities' side, may hear information from ambulances, from parties on the ground, may hear some words about shootings, about description of assessment of situation, and that might lead to questioning after that. You know that part of the main issue of the crisis, or the reason of the crisis, was that regime issue. You know the background of the story in Syria. So in the beginning there was the use of some buzzwords, for instance. On the radio, they use, for instance, a description of bullets was rain. So when the ambulance would report and say heavy rain, it's heavy bullets. When the use of so there was some coding. So only the dispatcher will understand on the ambulances what. The problem with that proved after a few months is that proved to be wrong, because when people don't understand you, they suspect you more, and they try to make in fact the worst understanding of what you are saying. This after a few months in the conflict, we changed that into, and we agreed with, we had a meeting with the authority. We said, okay, we are going to make your life easier, but you are going also to make our life easier. We are going to talk everything and describe everything as it is, because it is supposedly between our ambulances and our teams and our central command. You, on the other hand, you don't take us into questioning or take us under suspicion if you hear something on that radio, because it's supposed to be an internal communication. We know that you have the ability to eavesdrop on us. We can go and encrypt, but this is not the standard practice of the Red Cross. Red Cross and Red Crescent worldwide do not encrypt communication, because that leads to suspicion and it will hinder the safety of the teams. So the more you are clear, the more you are out there, the more you are speaking everything as it is, the more you should be at least protected. By time, the VHF radios, in fact, which have a very small range, I mean, you can talk few kilometers in a VHF radio, but since the conflict was spreading in Syria, the use of more and more different equipment was called for. So the Red Crescent went and installed something called the HF radios. HF radios are long range. They are used originally sometimes by military. You can see them with those long antennas over the jeeps, and those are HF radios. They can talk for hundreds and thousands of kilometers, in fact. Those were installed in the Red Crescent headquarters, in the branches. The Red Crescent had 14 branches. They correspond to 14 governments in Syria. And they have around 77 sub-branches all around Syria, and something like 9,000 volunteers. So HF radios were installed in main branches and sub-branches, so people can talk to each other. With that, the challenge came for, okay, we can talk, but what about data? Data is very important in field operations because everything you assess on the ground, it sums up into numbers and into maps and into locations and into all of those kind of data. At the beginning of the crisis, in fact, there was no challenge in exchanging those because the infrastructure was there. I mean, it was the conflict was in the beginning. There was no use of there was no heavy destruction to the infrastructure. For the first year, that was okay, but in the background of our mind as operations and management of that operation, we have always to think about planning and plan B and contingency. It was always in our mind that, okay, now we have communication, we can talk. We can talk using, at first, GSM, normal mobiles, we can use WhatsApp, we can use all of those. If we don't have that, we will revert to the VHF, although that it's a small range, but it will solve the problem. The data at that time, we didn't have a solution for that. We didn't think about that. In fact, it will reach a point where it will affect even the infrastructure. When it did, we had to find solutions for that. One of the solutions that we thought about it was data over HF. In fact, a small device, an HF modem can be installed to the HF radio, and it can transfer data over the HF for hundreds and thousands of kilometers. The problem with this method is we are talking about maximum 20 kilobytes per second. That's it. So transferring text, small text files will do. Transferring Excel files compressed to the maximum will do. Transferring images and video is out of the question. And it also depends on the weather, because HF radios are very affected with the weather. In fact, it's very affected even with the time of the day, because it uses the stratosphere. The signal will have to go up, reflect, and come down. For that, it has this big range, but that is also affected by the sun, by the stratosphere, by the weather, by a lot of issues. And that, we are talking about voice. So talking about data in that, it's another challenge, because for voice, maybe you can make up the missing words, but for the data, I mean, missing bytes, it's very hard to invent, even. Our trial into that proved to be, in fact, impractical, because it would take a lot of time. The data is being received corrupted, and you are broadcasting around 100 watts into the air. So, I mean, aliens from Mars will detect your station. So if somebody is snooping around, if somebody is scanning the frequencies, if somebody is looking just to target something with you are it. You are just throwing a big crosshair over your back. The solution after that went into a little bit low-tech, which is flash drives. Flash drives were to back up data from branches and sub-branches and try to physically send those flash drives from areas of siege, from areas of operations from branches which are under siege into the headquarters, one way or another. That used to happen through when ambulances managed to cross lines into the front, pick somebody to go back. They will have to exchange flashlights. Convoys taking in for besieged areas the humanitarian aid. They bring in tons of aid. They bring out 100 grams of a flashlight with them back to the headquarters, so they can have headquarters can have an idea about what's going on in that area. The importance of data, I mean, I have explained that many times. When you are in your comfort zone, or you are, or like yourself now, sitting around, it's very hard to comprehend what is it, how to survive or how to live if you don't have, I'm not talking about you don't have internet, I'm talking you don't have power sometimes to work, to even start power your laptop even. And you don't have power, it's not like you don't have power for a few hours. You don't have power like people in Aleppo, they didn't have power for 2 years and a half. So you have to find a ways around that. Outside, thinking out of the box, not even in communication terms, in power terms first. Let's power up the machine, then try to communicate after that. So generators over diesel generators, okay. When you don't have diesel, you have something else, maybe fine. Then the use of regenerating power like solar panels, they were used, wind turbines, they were used, something that were invented even in those besieged areas where they can easily change an electrical motor into a generator by just reversing the use of it and attaching a turbine to it to generate power to charge a battery and then power a laptop or something like that. So that was a challenge. In terms, in crises in general, I mean, there is generally two types of disasters or crises in the world. The natural ones, which we are talking hurricanes or earthquakes, and in those kind of disasters or events, most of the time, in 99%, the event has happened. It has finished, and now people like international NGOs or Red Cross, Red Crescent, anybody who wants to respond, they are responding after the event. So from this key moment forward, it's being enhanced because there is no more, most of the time, there is no more destruction. The security concerns in that type of disasters is lower because of the nature of the event, compared to disaster caused by man-made disasters such as conflicts. Conflicts are events which are ongoing, so the destruction is not finished yet. They might surprise you with the amount of destruction they do to urban areas, one day after another. So the event is not finished. So your people, your volunteers, your experts, you whatever, they are under constant danger from something they don't really calculate most of the time because of the changing events on the ground. Second, the challenges of security in those kind of events affects everything, from communication, normal communication, voice communication, VHF communication, which I mentioned before, into data communication, because beneficiaries' data become very sensitive. Why it becomes very sensitive? Because if somebody is looking to detain somebody, they might look at the data and see, okay, this guy has his wife, she is in this shelter, so if we detain the wife, he might come up out of his hiding. This person might be responsible for a front that is responsible of a whole city in Syria. So he is very important for the other party to capture. They will do the impossible to capture him, even if that does not comply really with the international humanitarian law, which is something a lot of parties to the conflict they tend to forget during the conflict. So beneficiaries' data become very important, and you have, as a Red Cross, as a Red Crescent, you have to secure it and you have to protect it because you are responsible for it. People come to you, beneficiaries come to you, they trust the Red Crescent to register because they want, of course, because they want the help. But help, even whatever you are providing to them, does not outweigh the risk. If they understood that there is a risk, because they trust you, they give you their data. A lot of the times we had the challenge of trying to protect the data, trying to stand firm, stating the principles of the Red Cross and the Red Crescent. We are impartial, we are neutral, our aim is only humanitarian. We will never share a data that belongs to beneficiaries, or names, or locations, or whatever. The only thing that can be shared is statistical data. Yes, we are accountable to our back donors. We are accountable to the government of this side and that side. We can share data, say, okay, this number of beneficiaries are in need. This number of beneficiaries are in need of water, sanitation, whatever. The names of those needed are not relevant to the assessment and shouldn't be relevant to any back donor that needs to claim, wants to help. And any deviation from that, the Red Cross and the Red Crescent will refuse the funding if some back donor will insist on teaching those principles and going into breaching the security, and which will hinder the security of those beneficiaries, and in turn the safety of the volunteers. In emergencies, if we can talk about planning. Sometimes it's a luxury, I have to say, because you can plan the response in the, bullet points, like in raw. You can plan and anticipate scenarios, but the nature of the event, especially in conflicts, is unpredictable. Part of our job and part of some of the things that I did through my time in the Red Cross and the Red Crescent movement was something called humanitarian diplomacy. I will tell you why. Because the understanding the politics, reading the political scene, understanding what's going on. In fact, although Red Cross and Red Crescent, they don't really care about the politics, but they care about what's going to happen, to anticipate the scenarios and to anticipate and to use that into some kind of planning or some kind of contingency planning, at least for the scenarios. In Syria, for instance, we were able to detect events few weeks from happening. We know that there is an aggression move against this city or that city. We anticipate that people will flee this city. We anticipate how the routing of those people, how will they flee from, they will exit from where, they will enter from where. That was in the beginning. After that, we gained more experience, and we gained more access even to the conflicting parties, and we tried not even to anticipate, we tried to guide. Okay, we know that due to the conflict, due to the aggressions, people will flee the area. This is the thing we cannot stop, but at least we can guide the people. We can create our exit points from besieged cities. We can ease the exit from certain areas, so we can anticipate and we can guide the people to go to those areas and to other shelters by creating those shelters and by creating those safe zones, by notifying beneficiaries about this. Information in disasters is not a one-way channel. It's a two-way channel. You assess and you need the data from the ground, from the field, yes, but also a lot of times you need to talk back to the beneficiaries. You need to tell them about, for instance, I have created a field hospital. If somebody needs something, he needs to go to this area. I have made a shelter which is empty, that people need shelter, need to go to that area. In times of crises, especially in Syria, the use of technology failed, because in fact the inhabitants of the besieged cities, they don't have even power. So we went back to the old type of communication, the word of mouth, sometimes bulletins, physical bulletins, in fact, in the streets, guiding people, using spray paint, sometimes to indicate danger with arrows. And if you go back and you search about videos, you can see, for instance, in a lot of cities, you can see arrows identifying, for instance, don't cross here, there is a sniper, don't cross here, hospital in that way. It's like the Flintstones sometimes. So in this 7 years of crisis, the Red Crescent lost 65 volunteers in the conflict. In the beginning of the conflict, I have to say, some of the volunteers lost their life due to being targeted by hostilities, by the parties, directly. Sometimes not by mistake, sometimes by a sniper, sometimes by bullets going into a checkpoint, and the checkpoint is not understanding what they are doing, so they just shoot at them. The Red Crescent, through communication with parties, try to raise the issue, try to make people understand. This helped. Targeting of volunteers and ambulances stopped, but because of the escalation of the conflict itself, volunteers still lost their life due to explosions, because they happened to be there. They lost their lives due to mortars landing in the city, because mortars land everywhere. They are not really precise. From the beginning of the crisis, the use of GIS and GPS and Google Maps was very heavy. If you go into the operation room of the Syrian Red Crescent, you will see the first thing you will notice is a map on a big screen which will indicate hospitals, crossing checkpoints in the city. It will indicate mortars when they hit the city where they are hitting. It will indicate passages and alternative routes if streets are closed from this area to that area and so on. This grew after, in 2013, we installed GPS over VHF. So ambulances, each 5 minutes, they report over VHF their location to the central command automatically. So you can see your ambulance's movement and everything. So guiding your ambulances, even now, we are talking now in Damascus, still mortars fall in Damascus. A lot of time it involves a lot of engineering, because you must see we know from where they are shot. We don't know where they land, but in fact, when routing an ambulance from A to B, we tend to have this ambulance pass in the shadow of the buildings. So if a mortar hit, it will hit maybe after the ambulance, it will hit the roof of the building, and so on. Now we are in the 7th year. We hope that this will be solved soon. A lot of the response that the Red Cross and the Red Crescent have done and is doing is evolving now into more livelihood projects for the people who are still there when the conflict in those areas are finished, or when people start to return, and there are people starting to return to some places, so they need support. Red Crescent is starting to make some normalization maybe to those areas, restoring services and all of that. This also includes things that Red Crescent usually doesn't do, like, for instance, supporting restoration of power, supporting restoration of phone lines, getting people training into livelihood, and into things that also relate to the community and to be normal again. So information to conclude maybe in a few sentences, communication is the lifeline in crises and disasters. When you lose your handheld device, you are cut off. It's something that's very essential, that we as Red Cross, Red Crescent value very much, and everybody knows that this is very essential. And the one thing that parties will search you when you are going crossing line is, do you have a mobile on you? Does your mobile have a camera? Did you photo anything? Did you record anything? So it always focuses on the information. For us as humanitarians, assessments are always essential, and with assessment need to come from the field to the headquarters. So assessing the situation and leaving that assessment in the field point does not help anybody. We need this information to go back to the headquarters, so we can plan the response. We can adjust our response to that. And with that, it comes also the ethics and the principles of the Red Cross and Red Crescent that governs all of this. So you have to communicate, but you have to communicate clearly. You cannot encrypt. You have to let everybody understand what you said, because if they don't understand, then they get suspicious, and if they get suspicious, they will put your life and the volunteer and your ambulances and your volunteers' life in danger. Thank you for listening. I'm ready for any further questions.
Thank you, Khaled. That was a very interesting and moving presentation. So I'll try to relay questions if you're unable to hear them from the class. and let you
Very
drink
good.
another sip of coffee. What questions do you have? Yes, Sylvia.
You mentioned the Red Crescent as a neutral and impartial organization that does not disclose beneficiary data to third parties. Could you further explain the measures you take to protect their data in case of interception?
Did you hear? So it's how do you protect citizen data so that beneficiary data so that if it did fall into the hands of someone who shouldn't have it, how are the names protected?
Well, in fact, we refuse to share data, so we don't respond, in fact, to the requests from authorities or from any party to share the data that we have. Data is, of course, the Red Crescent, well, I mean, we are not that sophisticated. So, in fact, in our headquarters and in registrations, we use simply SQL servers and the web interface to those. If somebody really forces his way in and occupy the building and got hold of the data physically, well, we all know because well, I come from a background of telecommunication. I'm a telecom engineer. We know that physical access is the king. I mean, if you have the physical access to the server, I mean, most of the time you have everything, unless the data is encrypted. We don't encrypt the data. So I'm afraid if it reaches that, then the data is compromised. But if it reaches that, then everything else has failed. And everything else means that all the diplomacy that the Red Crescent have, all the negotiations and all the treaties that is in place has failed. And the party who is doing that is in fact in breach of the international humanitarian law, and this is a war, a crime of war. So it's good that it didn't happen in Syria yet.
Wow. So in the 7 years, there has not been a theft of data from the Syrian Red Crescent.
No, in the 7th year there was no theft of data. I mean, people tried in one occasion or another. Branches of Red Crescent were occupied. Our branch, for instance, in Raqqa, were occupied by ISIS. At one point, ISIS occupied the branch. They kicked everybody out and they occupied it. And they claimed that they want to run the humanitarian operation themselves. Of course, the answer from the Red Crescent headquarters was that unless you can evict the building and you can guarantee a neutral and impartial operation that our volunteers in Raqqa can operate, we will stop all the aid coming because we cannot guarantee a neutral and impartial aid reaching the beneficiaries. They looted everything, but by the time they did that, we had already backed up the data and took everything from the branch. So that was it. That was the only attempt. It was by ISIS.
Other questions? Yes, Connor.
So you said earlier on that early on in the conflict there were targeted attacks against Red Crescent members. Do those still happen, or have those kind of subsided? Because it seems like you made it sound like they had subsided.
So the question was, have violence against Red Crescent volunteers and staff that happened near the beginning of the conflict, has that gotten better since then?
Well, of course, it got better. Now, I mean, for a few years now, I have to say, all the incidents, or let me say 95 of the incidents that caused injuries or loss of life, was not a targeting for against Red Crescent or against an ambulance. It was due to incidents that happening for the mass population. I mean, if when a mortar falls into the street and an ambulance is driving by, they are not targeting the ambulance because the mortar is not a weapon of precise. Sometimes when we lost some volunteers responding to explosions, to car bombs, because ISIS used the technique of double bombing. Right? They make a small explosion in the beginning, and when the responding teams go to try to save the people, then another bomb explodes. We lost some volunteers in that. We cannot really pin and say that it is targeted for the Red Crescent, because we are at the end, our volunteers, we are a grassroots organization. I mean, our volunteers are from the community. This is the main difference between the Red Crescent or the Red Cross worldwide and any other agency that works in humanity. For instance, the UN, they are the UN. I mean, they come as experts and they go. They are not from the community. A lot of volunteers lost their life. In fact, sometimes when they are not in missions. They are just walking in the street after duty, or coming or going from their shifts. Sometimes they were responding in civilian clothes because they happened to pass by and an explosion happened. They responded, and voila, another explosion comes. So it is enhanced. The last person we lost, it was a few months ago in their zone. Before the siege was broken from ISIS, and it was due to a shelling from ISIS into the city. This volunteer lost his life.
We have time for one more question. So Khaled, you lost some senior people early on from the Red Crescent itself, yes?
In the beginning, yes. In the beginning of the crisis, we lost the Secretary General of the Syrian Red Crescent. It was a shooting near Idlib, in fact. Before the situation was now if you follow the news, now Idlib is besieged. Is one of the points, one of the cities that have a mixture of opposition and fundamentals and al-Nusra, and I mean, you name it. So he was shot on his way to Idlib on the highway, in fact, by a makeshift checkpoint that wasn't there a few hours ago. Usually, when you are operating in an emergency, everything you see, you report. So everything we see, everything our teams see on the streets, on the highways, it's recorded in paper and it's reported back. So when sudden changes sometimes happen, this causes an accident. They created a checkpoint he didn't know about. It was from some opposition party. He was surprised by our car coming on a high speed, but it's expected to be in a high speed because he was on a highway. It's a 400-kilometer highway between two cities, so usually you don't drive 20 kilometers per hour. And they just show him coming out of nowhere, and they shot everybody in the car. So yes, we have lost a lot of some senior people, some branch leaders also. They were lost in Raqqa and in Deir Zor due to shootings and shelling of those cities by parties and by ISIS at one point.
Well, I guess to end on a note of some hope. I'm gratified to hear that some things are getting better, and hopefully there's a light at the end of a very long tunnel. But it is very late in your evening, and I would like you to be able to get some sleep and rest, and wanted to thank you for all of the work you and your colleagues are doing on behalf of vulnerable people. So, Khaled, it's been an honor to have you address us today.
Well, thank you for listening, and hope you will get something out of that. We hope that the light at the end of the tunnel is not a train, and everything we all will have good news, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year for all of you. Thank you.